In the set of 7.1, you're asked to construct a number of objects. So the first construction that we're going to do is constructing a perpendicular bisector. And we're going to look at the line segment NA. So for most of these constructions, we're kind of going back to the rhombus, which was why we started with the rhombus. If I treat NA as a diagonal of my rhombus, when I draw in the other diagonal, I will have a perpendicular bisector. So let's construct that rhombus. So I have my compass open to a certain length. I know that my length from A to up here needs to be the same from N to up above, and that my length from N below has to be the same from my length from A to below. Now you can see here, if I draw in very lightly my rhombus, I'm going to draw it in with a pencil because that's not actually the goal of this construction. It's not to create a rhombus, but it's really nice to see that that is what we have constructed here initially. So I have a rhombus here, and I have a diagonal. Now, if I draw in my other diagonal, that's from the top to the bottom, I have actually created a perpendicular 90-degree bisector congruent pieces. Let's just also add that in. Bisector creates congruent pieces, and a perpendicular is a 90 degrees. My next construction is to copy this line segment. So before I can copy the line segment, I need to have some place to copy it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I am going to draw in a straight line. But I'm going to make my line longer than the line I'm copying. And the reason for that is that when I measure the length of IK, a little bit more. Oh, my compass is not cooperating. Okay, right there. Measure the length of IK. I now have some place to copy that length. I copy it onto this line segment. And now I can say that this, we'll call it IK prime, is the same length as IK. We can mark that so that we know that they are congruent. Copying an angle, again, before I can start copying an angle, I need some place to copy it. So for an angle, I'm not measuring the lengths of these lines, I'm measuring how open my angle is. But in order to copy it, I need some place to start. So again, my first step here is going to be to draw a ray. This ray right here is where the JL piece sits. I now need to measure this angle, but I want you to notice that if I measure the angle with any measuring tool, that this length is going to be smaller than this length. So before I can measure, I have to set where I am measuring. So I do that by making an arc on my angle. So I now have a place where I'm going to measure. I'm going to measure from that place right there where the arc hits the ray JN, and then I'm going to measure that to this point right here where the arc hits ray JL. Now again, I need a place to put this measurement on my new angle, so I'm going to have to keep my compass the same distance, same opening as it was when I made this mark. That way, when I find this length, there's some place to copy it. So now I use my compass to measure the length of this arc, and that looks about right. So now I can place that measure. I need to know, do I place it here? Do I place it here? Do I place it here? Well, the whole reason why we made this arc is so that I can place it here. And I then now have where my second ray sits. And I can call this angle N prime, J prime, L prime. And I have now copied that angle. My next step is to bisect an angle. Bisecting an angle in a lot of ways involves constructing a rhombus again. This time, though, I'm given not a diagonal. I'm given similar to what I was given in the notes for the construction introduction. I'm given an angle. I'm not told, however, a particular length for my rhombus. So I am going to decide for myself. There's my length for my rhombus. There's one side of my rhombus. There's the second side of my rhombus. Now I have to come out here and get that third and fourth length of my rhombus. Again, I'm going to draw in where the rhombus is in this construction, but remember, that's not the goal of the construction. That just helps us get to the goal. So again, the rhombus sits right here. And the reason I draw a rhombus is because the diagonal of a rhombus cuts an angle in half, bisects it. So I now can draw in the diagonal, which means I now have two congruent angles. I have bisected angle IMN. And just for completion's sake, we're going to add a K out here. That way I have all my angles are able to be named. The big construction that you did in 7.1 and that you're asked to reproduce in the set is constructing a square. Now, a square has two pieces. It has 90-degree angles and congruent sides.